Going? All right. Okay, today is our last tour of the models. This is for urinary and reproductive, lab 17. So I'm actually going to start with urinary since it is the next topic and system. We have two full-size models of the kidneys. One is on a pedestal, one is not. I'm going to be focusing on the one that is not, but everything on the pedestal kidney is the same. Okay, so either or both may be on there. You're going to want to find the key on the S drive for the kidney model. It is in there. And when you find the correct key, you'll notice that the structures match. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start through it here. We already did this model once with the adrenal gland, so now we're going to be focusing on the renal gland, which is the kidney. Okay, the whole thing is the kidney. We have your renal artery and vein. I think we've already done that. This whole region here in the center, it's called the renal pelvis. The renal pelvis is the area in the center that catches all the urine coming from the pyramids, which are these structures here. And within the pyramids are what are called nephrons. So that's what collects it all. What would you call a big hard object in your kidney, folks?
Stone.
Kidney stone. So this yellow thing is a kidney stone. Okay. Let's see, what else? Oh, this large structure here, anything that's kind of dark red, it's called a renal pyramid because it's shaped just like a pyramid, right? Kind of curved rather than straight-sided. The red near the top are called arcuate, artery and vein. So anything that's curving around like an arch, arcuate, artery and vein. And all the other structures are keyed, but that's pretty much what I ask from this. And from this model over here, you're going to see the same exact structures, just slightly different numbers, okay? The other main difference here is it does have nephrons shown with the different components of it. Now, I normally don't ask nephron components on this model because it's really, really small. I tend to ask nephron components on the next model, which is the model of the pyramid. This is a pyramid model, kidney pyramid, and I'm going to go through the structures here. Okay, the light yellow is called the glomerulus with Bowman's capsule. So glomerulus is the structure inside. I'll show you the internal stuff later. But the Bowman's capsule is what surrounds it, so that's light yellow. I'm going to come down here. You can see the glomerulus is in red in the center, and then the lightest greenish yellow is the Bowman's capsule. So this first part, this first kind of wiggly line, is called the proximal convoluted tubule, or proximal tubule. That is where most of the liquid from the filtrate, I don't know if I talked about that in lecture, gets reabsorbed back. And then the filtrate, which is going to become urine, goes down through the descending loop of Henle. That's 18. 19 is the bottom of the loop of Henle. It may have slightly different names in other places, but any of those names that you come up with are fine. And then 20 is going to be the ascending portion, ascending limb of the loop of Henle. So the whole thing, this whole U-shaped structure is called the loop of Henle. That's where salt and water balance occur, a very salty area. Now the area after that loop, after the U-shape, is called the distal convoluted tubule because it's distal from the loop of Henle. This large white structure running down the center is called the collecting duct, and that's going to lead out to the renal pelvis. So this is a model that shows several nephrons and how they're all related and connected to each other. The next model is called the glomerulus model. This is just a model of the glomerulus. Okay, so it's really difficult to tell which is which. So these two vessels here, one is afferent and one is efferent, but I'm going to ask for both. So you're going to want to say afferent and efferent vessels. Afferent and efferent vessels. Okay, next we're into the glomerulus itself, which looks kind of like this web of blood vessels. If I say name this whole structure, I put a pin right here on it, that's the glomerulus. That's the whole blood vessel web. But if I say name this pink colored cell, that is called a podocyte. Podocyte means foot cell. And in my lecture, I talk about how the little feet of the podocyte overlap, leaving little gaps, and that allows the urine to come out. Okay, so the next structure is going to be Bowman's capsule. This is the thing that surrounds the glomerulus. And then leading away from it is called the proximal convoluted tubule. I showed you that in the other one, but now it's being in much larger view. Now, one of the things that this one didn't show very well is that the distal convoluted tubule actually comes back to the beginning to give feedback from the end back to the beginning. So this light green here with the tan center is called the distal convoluted tubule. So the distal convoluted tubule comes back towards the beginning and gives information to the glomerulus, afferent and efferent vessels on how much they should open or close so that you can get a proper flow of urine. So this is called the glomerulus with Bowman's capsule model. So this will also be there. There's only one of these, and one of these. But the next model, there's a whole bunch of them. This one shows various different views. Notice on this particular model, this is what I call the four-sided kidney model. This has a QR code, so you're going to want to use that QR code, and I'm going to go through each of the sides. So I'm going to start with macroscopic, which is here. I won't ask probably much on the macroscopic side. This is the whole kidney. But then as we move further inward, I guess we're going to go here. Now, one of the reasons why this one is a little bit nicer than this other one over here is because each of the different regions of the nephron, which is the glomerulus, proximal convoluted tubule, loop of Henle, and distal convoluted tubule, that's one nephron. Each of these has a different color, so it'll make it a little bit easier for you guys. So in this case, bright yellow is the glomerulus with Bowman's capsule, and then the kind of light orange is the proximal convoluted tubule. Light yellow is going to be loop of Henle. And then all this white, I guess they're considering to be the distal convoluted tubule. This is really the ascending loop and then the distal convoluted tubule, and then continuing on to the collecting duct. So it shows several nephrons together. Now, right immediately next to it, it shows a little bit more detail on how the blood vessels interact with the nephron. I don't usually test on this portion because the blood vessels are kind of tangled up with the various tubules, and it's really hard to identify anything. Okay, this one shows a little bit larger view on how the proximal tubule and distal convoluted tubules kind of interact with each other. You can see the distal convoluted tubule is kind of a really light pink or whitish color, and the proximal convoluted tubule is yellow. Notice that there's a little bit of red clay on there, which means I have tested on this before. So this is the glomerulus with the Bowman's capsule around it. They're also showing you what the cross-sectional view for each of the different regions of the nephron look like. Okay, and then the last section over here is very similar to the model that I just showed you, which was a blow-up view of the glomerulus. So anything kind of reddish would be glomerular vessels, and then the tan would be podocytes, which cover the glomerulus. Proximal convoluted tubule, distal convoluted tubule, afferent and efferent arterioles. Again, very difficult to tell the difference, so as long as you know both of them, you're good. I'll probably have a piece of clay arching between them saying name both vessels, afferent and efferent arteriole. And I think that's it for this model. Last two models are going to be reproductive. Okay, let's start with the male just because it's on the end. So we're going to talk about two parts of this model, the lateral external, what I'm calling lateral external view, and that's going to separate from the medial cross-sectional view. Okay, so let's go through some of the different parts. Penis, obviously. Testis, white. The structure on top of the testis, I often test on this. I test this on this, which is the epididymis. The epididymis sits right on top of the testis. So make sure that you don't call that the vas deferens, because the vas deferens does not sit right on top of the testes. Okay? It's the epididymis. This is where sperm matures and gets ready to be released. Then the tube that comes up and around the pubic bone is called the vas deferens or ductus deferens. That's fine. This one here, gosh, it always gets me. Cowper's gland or bulbourethral. I don't know. We're going to have to look that one up. I can't ever seem to remember which one this one is. It's just one of my weak spots. Okay, this purplish structure here is the prostate, and that's the last of the, what I'm calling the exterior or lateral view of the male reproductive. Now, the other side of it is really similar to the cross-sectional view of it. So I'm just going to go ahead and go to the cross-sectional view. The different regions of the internal part of the penis I don't usually test on, but there is the testes again. On the outside of the testes is the scrotum, and in the center of the penis again is the vas deferens. This is the urethra. I'm getting all turned around. The urethra goes to the center of the penis, okay? And from this view, if I ask for the name of the tube that's inside the prostate, this is that purple prostate again. Here it looks red because it's been cut in cross-section. If I ask for the tube right in the center of that, that's called the prostatic urethra. It's no longer the vas deferens. So once it crosses into the prostate, it becomes the prostatic urethra, and then the rest of it is either just the urethra or the penile urethra. Okay? What else are we seeing? Digestive. I told you guys I'd come back to digestive on this. This is the end of the sigmoid colon here, rectum down here, and then anus at the end. Anything else I'm missing? I think that's it for male stuff. Okay, on to female. We're going to go the same way. We're going to do lateral/external. I have tested on these glands that produce the lubricant for sex. For some reason, it evades me, so I'm not going to ask you guys to know it. Okay, let's go up here. The yellow structure here is the ovary. That's what is producing the ova or eggs and the female reproductive hormones. This here is called the fimbriae? The fimbriae? I guess it's the fimbriae of the oviduct. There's another name for it. It's evading me, but we're just going to go with fimbriae of the oviduct. What those do are they're little fingers that guide the ovum into the oviduct. Sometimes, I don't know if you guys know, ladies, your ovaries are actually in your abdominal cavity. And there's not a direct connection between the ovary and the oviduct. And so if one of the ova gets lost and doesn't find its way into the oviduct, it can end up forming an ectopic or abdominal pregnancy, which is a problem. And so these little fimbriae kind of guide the egg down into the oviduct so that it can be fertilized in the oviduct. Interestingly, from my lecture, if you guys watched that, fertilization normally occurs right about here in the oviduct, and then implantation occurs in the uterus. So this is the oviduct or ductus fallopian tube. Oviduct or fallopian tube. There's another name for it, ductus, but anyway, just go with those two. Okay, and then here on the lateral view is going to be the uterus, but I don't usually test on this lateral view for uterus. I tend to focus on just these two things here. I may ask labia minora here. Labia minora is one of the structures here that you can see, and I'm going to see if I can figure out what these are called again. For some reason, it evades me. Okay, there's a lot more to know on the cross-sectional or sagittal, mid-sagittal section on the female. I already showed you the ovary and oviduct and fimbriae. So let's go now to the uterus. It's this whole structure here. And right here at the tip of my finger is cervix. You guys have all had a swab of the cervix, which is called what?
Pap smear.
Pap smear, right. So this is testing for abnormal cells. The tube leading down from it is vagina, and just below it is the urinary bladder. Make sure you have both words. So don't just say bladder, because there's the gallbladder and the urinary bladder, and they're on the same test. And some people lost points because they assumed that I knew what other word went with that. Since there are two bladders, you have to say urinary bladder. Don't skip a part. Okay, the tube leading from the urinary bladder down to the exterior part is called the urethra. Now, I'm going to have to take a step back because I forgot something. On the kidney, this tube here leading away from the kidney is called the ureter. Ureter. So the tube that leads from the kidney to the urinary bladder is called the ureter. Okay, I forgot to give you guys that before. So this is urethra and ureter. Okay, same stuff from the male, sigmoid colon, rectum, anus, and I think that's about it. That's all.